If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? It's a question you've probably heard before, a kind of philosophical riddle. But for the 18th century philosopher George Berkeley, the answer was simple: no. In fact, he would go even further and say that if no one perceives the tree, if no mind sees it, hears it, or thinks of it, it doesn't just fall silently. It doesn't exist at all. Sounds absurd? Maybe. But Berkeley's radical idea that reality only exists as it's perceived wasn't just a clever thought experiment. It was a full-blown philosophy, one that challenged everything people thought they knew about the nature of the world. George Berkeley was born in 1685 in County Kilkenny, Ireland, and by the early 18th century, he had positioned himself as one of the most original thinkers in the history of philosophy. A deeply religious man, Berkeley studied at Trinity College, Dublin, where he was first drawn to the major philosophical questions of his time. He eventually became an Anglican bishop, but his clerical career never overshadowed his intellectual ambition. From a young age, Berkeley was convinced that the prevailing materialist view of the world, common among the emerging scientific minds of the Enlightenment, was deeply flawed, not just philosophically, but morally and spiritually. At the heart of Berkeley's philosophy lies a deceptively simple Latin phrase, Esse est Percipi, to be is to be perceived. Berkeley rejected the idea that material objects exist independently of the mind. The physical world, as we commonly understand it, is not made of substance or matter, but of perceptions, sights, sounds, textures, tastes that arise within consciousness. A tree, a book, a cup of tea. These are not external, self-sustaining things, but rather patterns of sensory experience that exist only when they are being perceived. This idea didn't emerge from mysticism or speculation, but from a careful examination of how we come to know the world. Berkeley observed that everything we know about objects comes through our senses. We see colours, we hear sounds, we feel textures, but we never directly experience matter itself. We only experience the impressions it supposedly causes. So Berkeley asked, if all we ever know are perceptions, why assume there's some hidden, mind-independent substance behind them? His conclusion was radical. We don't need to postulate the existence of material substance at all. The so-called external world is simply a collection of ideas perceived by minds. And when something is not being perceived by a human observer, it doesn't vanish into nothingness, because God perceives all things at all times. In Berkeley's system, divine perception serves as the metaphysical anchor that keeps the world stable, even when no finite minds are watching. What makes this theory so provocative is not just its boldness, but its consistency. Berkeley wasn't denying that we experience a world of order and regularity. He fully accepted that the world behaves according to predictable patterns. But he reinterpreted these patterns not as the workings of inert matter, but as the orderly presentation of ideas within a divine framework. For him, reality wasn't less real because it was perceived. It was more meaningful, more vivid, precisely because it existed in and through the mind. Berkeley's idealism challenges us to reconsider one of our most basic assumptions: that the world exists out there, independently of us. It asks us to imagine a reality not of cold, impersonal matter, but of experience, perception, and consciousness. A world where meaning is not an afterthought, but built into the very structure of existence itself. One of the most immediate reactions to Berkeley's philosophy is disbelief. If, as he claims, the material world doesn't exist independently of perception, then what happens when no one is around to perceive it? As mentioned earlier, the classic example is the tree falling in the forest. If no one hears it, does it make a sound? For Berkeley, not only is there no sound, but without perception, there is no tree. This view raises an obvious objection. Does that mean reality flickers in and out of existence depending on whether someone is looking? Berkeley anticipated this concern. His solution rested on the role of God, not as a theological afterthought, but as a central metaphysical principle. According to Berkeley, even when no human is perceiving something, God is. As the infinite, all-knowing perceiver, God guarantees the continued existence and order of the world. In other words, things don't stop existing when we stop perceiving them, because God's perception never lapses. For Berkeley, divine perception is what makes the world stable, consistent, and intelligible. Without it, his philosophy would collapse into solipsism, the belief that only one's own mind is real, an accusation he firmly rejected. Berkeley's philosophy may seem like an abstract puzzle, but in the context of his time, it was a direct challenge to one of the most powerful intellectual movements of the modern era, the rise of scientific materialism. In the wake of Newton's groundbreaking discoveries, the physical world was increasingly understood in mechanical terms, as a vast, impersonal machine governed by laws of motion and composed of mindless particles. Within this framework, perception was treated as a secondary feature, something produced by matter, not something that defined it. Berkeley turned this view on its head. As highlighted earlier, he argued that perception was not an afterthought of physical processes, but the very foundation of reality. In doing so, he reasserted the primacy of mind in a period where mind was being marginalized. His immaterialism wasn't a denial of science, but a reorientation of its meaning. Instead of grounding knowledge in an external, mind-independent world, Berkeley claimed that knowledge is rooted in the regularity of our experiences. His ideas were not warmly received by all. Many of his contemporaries dismissed immaterialism as absurd or impractical. Yet Berkeley's influence quietly endured. David Hume would later grapple with similar questions about perception and the self, while philosophers in the 20th century, particularly in phenomenology and philosophy of language, would revisit themes that echoed Berkeley's insistence on the centrality of experience. Even in contemporary debates about virtual reality, simulation theory, and the philosophy of mind, one hears faint resonances of Berkeley's original insight, that perhaps the world is not a thing we are in, but an experience we are part of. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to join us on this journey of exploring philosophy, psychology, and the thinkers who shaped our world.